to live stream the meeting. Oh, it looks like we're live.
Yep.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody. We're back.
We're back. I'm going to go ahead and start up on Instagram. And then, so I'm live on Instagram, so hopefully it shows up on your end, Dr. Q. Hi, everyone. We are back for Ask the Experts. Ask Dr. Q. Good to see you all. And then, so I'm live on Instagram, so hopefully it shows up on your end.
Let's see.
You know what? I forgot my headphones. I wonder if it's gonna work without it.
I don't see it coming up on Sickle Cell 101.
You're on Sickle Cell Plus, right? Hi, guys.
Wait.
Shows up on your end.
Let's see.
You know,
I don't see Sickle Cell. Something happened. Let me try this again. Oh, it'll be up on. Oh, here we go. Got it.
Can you guys help me with the filter?
I had to refresh again.
I don't know how to put a filter on. I'm trying to spare you guys.
So if you give me a join, I'll join.
Hi, cleaning at its best. Cleaning at its best. All right, I send an invite. I need to find
a filter. Okay, so I should be on Instagram instantly.
There he is. All right, the crew is back. All right, I'm trying to get this into a good spot here.
Hello, everybody. Hey, tell us where you're coming from. That's always interesting.
Where you're tuning in from, so we can shout out some cities. And it looks like we have a couple viewers on YouTube. Hello. Hi, everyone. So excited to see you guys. I know it's been a while, but we're back. We're here. Please feel free to go ahead and start putting in your questions down below, and we will get started with your questions. We'll jump right into it. Dr. Q, how have you been?
I've been really good. I'm getting older. If you can notice, my hair is a little grayer. My eyebrows are gray. Yeah, but I've been doing. I take care of my grandkids, so that keeps me at least physically young. But and they're fun.
You just mentioned Cerritos, California before we hopped on live, and we have somebody from Cerritos here. Or no, it was Cerritos, right? Or El Cerrito. Just kidding. Yeah. I think you're talking about El Cerrito. Okay. We have
someone from Tanzania. And somebody says there is an echo, but I've got my headphones on.
Okay, that would be me. Give me a second, guys. I'm sorry. I haven't done this in a long time. But we can get started with the first question. What can I do to reduce my crisis and hospitalization?
Well, the first thing you can do is to talk to your primary care physician about starting hydroxyurea if you're not on hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea is a medication that's been around a long time, decades and decades, and sickle cell physicians have prescribed it a lot. The side effects are well known. There aren't that many. It can be monitored, and it really makes a huge difference for people who have sickle cell disease. It increases your fetal hemoglobin, which is what some of these new gene therapies do. And it also has other effects with something called NO, which is a vasodilator. There's just a lot of effects of hydroxyurea. And most of the studies that have been done recently, like voxelotor and crizolizumab and I should know these like that, but I don't. People who were in those studies were taking hydroxyurea. It was allowed for them to be taking hydroxyurea. So you can take hydroxyurea with these new therapies that have just come out because there were people taking hydroxyurea in those studies. And a lot of people take combination now because it's sometimes better for some people, but you need to talk to your personal care physician to see, what they recommend. But a lot of people are on hydroxyurea and other medications.
All right, I'm going to shout out a couple more places. We have Michigan, we have Charleston, South Carolina, we have Tanzania, and London, UK. I'm going to be there at the beginning of next month. So I'm excited to be in London, but I heard it's crazy over there. So I don't know. Maybe you can tell me what to expect. Birmingham, Cerritos, not El Cerritos. Okay, got it. Kigali. Okay, perfect. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Somebody says they have a blood clot in their brain. I have a lot of questions about that. Please feel free to share whatever questions you have surrounding that, and we will try our best to get them answered.
Somebody said that hydroxyurea doesn't work for them, and it's true. A very small percent, 5%, less maybe, hydroxyurea doesn't work. But what you do have to remember is hydroxyurea is getting your bone marrow to make fetal hemoglobin. And that can take months, like 3 months, 6 months. So if you haven't taken it for at least 6 months, then you can't be sure that it's not working. But it doesn't work in everybody. That is for sure.
All right. I have a person online who has a mental health issue. Please feel free to reach out if you need to talk. Dr. Q and I are happy to kind of talk through. Sometimes it helps talking to other people with sickle cell because we know what you're going through. And so, we're a community, we're in this together, we're here for you. So please reach out and we can talk.
And if you're in California, Cayenne Wellness in Southern California has free mental health services for anybody with sickle cell disease. So if you're in California, then you can get free mental health care through Cayenne.
Someone says, I have sickle cell anemia and I've been in and out of the hospital for 2 months straight now. What are some different home remedies I can use besides heat? So alternative, I guess, pain management besides heat.
If you've been in the hospital many, many times over the months for pain and you're taking opioids, then every day. A lot of people with sickle cell disease do have pain every single day. I take opiates every day.
Yeah.
But I think if this is something new that has just popped up, then I think what you need to do is work with your primary care provider and see if you can't have either your primary care provider or a pain expert evaluate your pain and see if they can't reduce, this sounds kind of counterintuitive, see if they can't reduce the amount of opioids you're taking. Opioids have a lot of side effects, and they can cause something called hyperalgesia, where they do the opposite thing of what they're supposed to do. They make you more sensitive to pain than you were when you weren't taking it. And it's kind of a difficult thing because you don't really want to decrease your dose because maybe that's not going to happen. And so there's evidence that decreasing your opioids over time can actually be helpful. The other thing is make sure that the pain you're having is sickle cell pain and not a side effect of sickle cell, that there's not something else going on besides having these reoccurring pain episodes. And this is a long, as Cassandra knows, this is a long journey. So you need to find somebody, a physician who you trust, who you can go to get help with pain episodes. One of the problems with going into the ED and the inpatient is that the people don't know you. So they're just going to give you pain medicine because that's all they know how to do. And they don't know that much about sickle cell. So that's another reason why you should really rely on, find a good sickle cell physician and let them help you through some of these really difficult times.
And then just if anybody has any tips on dealing with pain that might have worked for you with sickle cell, and I guess this would be alternative ways to deal with pain, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm trying to think. For me, I know distraction is another considered therapy, like where you turn on a show and try and ignore the pain, but sometimes the sickle cell pain, you cannot ignore it. So I guess it just depends on the level of pain you're in, but if it's significant, then you should probably seek medical care seek medical care. And like Dr. Q said, they know you at a day hospital or they know you in clinic. So I would always opt for going to clinic and, calling up my hematologist. Here we have a 24-hour hematologist, calling them up and then, scheduling an appointment the day after as opposed to going to the ER. But that's if you can, wait for that night or, however much time. Yeah, good luck with that. How long do blood clots last? My doctors have not been clear on how long it may take to get rid of blood clots.
Well, that's because it depends on where the blood clot is, what medication you're taking for the blood clot.
This would be the person who talks about having a blood clot in their
brain.
Yeah.
Well, so if you're on anticoagulants work, and there are medications that if you're having a stroke, an acute event, there are medications that can be used to kind of dissolve the clot. And if you, within the golden 2 or 3 hours, if you realize you're having a stroke and you go into the ED, there's a possibility to get medication to dissolve that stroke, that clot. The thing with sickle cell disease is a lot of times, or probably most of the time maybe, if you're younger, the stroke is not caused by a clot, it's caused by the vessels getting narrower and narrower, and then they get occluded. So a clot is a little bit different with sickle cell disease. There are, if it's causing you significant symptoms, which in your brain it may not, but it may be causing problems, I think, a neurologist, neurosurgeon, someone who is focusing on that would be good, just to get more information. Again, your primary care physician knows the history and what's been done, what hasn't been done. But it's true, you can't really tell how long it's going to take. And if the clot is what's called organized, then it could take a long time and it may not actually dissolve. It depends on the medication, how long you've had it, a lot of different things that your personal physician knows, but of course I don't. So that's my advice.
Okay. I have a question here that says, can people with sickle cell go to the gym? What kind of exercises can we do? What do you think, Dr. Q?
I think you can go to the gym. I know personally a few young men who go to the gym and they're pretty buff. And so they work out, they hydrate a lot, they drink a lot of water, they don't overdo it. But going to the gym is not a one-time thing. It's something you start very light, really doing a little more than nothing, and you build up over time. You can't think you're going to go in there and start weightlifting day one. So it's
that was me at one point. I was like, yeah, because you get motivated, right? You're like, oh, today I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna do this, and like you end up hurting yourself in the end, honestly. Because I was like, oh yeah, never have gone to the gym at all. I'm gonna walk 1 mile on the treadmill or whatever,
right.
And it's just like really. So pace yourself. It's not about being perfect. One thing that really helps me go to the gym, because I don't really go to the gym, but I love walking. Like I love a good walk, especially outside. I don't really like walking on treadmills, but the goal is to make it a healthy habit. And to make it a healthy habit, sometimes we have to think about like being perfect at the gym all the time. Like, oh, you have to reach a certain amount. But sometimes like you don't feel like going to the gym that day. Maybe you only go for 5 minutes, right? But you still want to establish that habit. So just because you go to the gym doesn't mean like you have to be running 5 miles and lifting and doing like, be amazing at it. You can suck at going to the gym, but as long as you still go to the gym and get that exercise, I think that's the best, or that's the mindset that has helped me. But ask me if I've been to the gym lately or been walking lately. It's a no. But I want to start back up again.
It is a habit too.
Yeah.
It's not something you just sort of like, well, today I'm going to go to the gym. And then 3 weeks later, today I think I'll go to the gym again.
Yeah.
You have to I'm old. So people who get to be my age, you lose your muscle mass. That's just what happens. Believe it or not, in 3 years, I'll be 80. So, so you have to, and I've been going to the gym for maybe 4 or 5 years, I guess. And I go 3 times a week, and I started off really, really like nothing because I'd never gone to the gym. And slowly over all these years, I've gotten to the point where I'm, not doing a little more than nothing. But it takes a long time. You really have to pace yourself, especially with sickle cells. You have to hydrate like crazy before you go, while you're there, and afterwards. Because even if you're not used to it, even if you're not doing that much, your body's not used to that. So you need to hydrate. You need to really take care of yourself if you're going to the gym. But it is possible. Walking is great. People with sickle cell disease actually do better with pain and their sickle cell disease, etc., if they get a moderate, light amount of exercise. You can't run a lot if you have SS because your hemoglobin is kind of low. So you need that hemoglobin to carry the oxygen to your muscles, and you will get tired before other people do because you're anemic, and you won't be able to go as fast or do things that require a lot of sustained exercise, but like weightlifting, really light weightlifting, walking, that kind of stuff is really good for sickle cell disease. It will actually, it could increase your hemoglobin a little bit if you were exercising.
So exercise is good for sickle cell, but you have to take it at your pace. Don't go overboard, and because exercise can be a trigger too, right? So it really is everything in moderation. If you're walking, starting off, do a 5-minute walk. Day number 2, do an 8-minute walk. Day number 3, do a 10, like kind of just go up gradually, and at your pace, right? So. And funny enough, it's so funny because like people were like, oh my gosh, you must exercise a lot, because I wear like yoga, I wear like workout clothes all the time. And that's like just my aesthetic because it's so comfortable. And us, like with sickle cell, you just love being comfortable. Like comfort is just like everything, and so clothes like without the tags and everything, just like really comfortable. So I look like I work out, but I don't. But I do walk from time to time, and hopefully by the end of this month, I'll get back to my walking routine.
It's hard to, especially if you live somewhere where the weather isn't great. It's either, climate change. So it's really, really hot out. If it's 100 degrees, don't go out for, you're not going to be able to go out and walk, or if it's 90.
Yeah.
And then if it's during the winter, if it's really cold, you have to really pace yourself. You can't think that if you live in LA and the temperature is 98, you are not going to be able to go for a 1-mile walk because it's too hot. You'd be drinking. It just, you would not do very well with that. So the treadmill isn't great, but if you're in a gym and it's, the temperature is 70, then you're going to do fine.
Yeah. All right. Next question right here. I'm gonna get to the splenic infarcts, and then we're gonna talk about cure, because you guys there's a couple of questions around bone marrow transplant. And so the question for hello from Alameda, California. Hey, neighbor.
Hey.
Would appreciate any information about splenic infarcts, cause, treatments, prevention, and such, specifically in SC.
Okay, so splenic infarcts are common and splenic sequestration, where the spleen the spleen gets very large because you have sickling in the spleen. You don't really have pain necessarily, but you have sickling in the spleen. The blood gets trapped in the spleen gets very large in small children, and they can need to have a transfusion and definitely be hospitalized because their hemoglobin will just drop really fast. People with SC can also have splenic problems, but it usually starts later, like in adolescence or early adulthood. They can start having splenic infarcts that are painful, and they can also have splenic sequestration. So having splenic infarcts, depending on how bad they are and how much they inhibit you, you'd have to really talk to your primary care physician about what to do with that, because the sort of definitive treatment is to have a splenectomy, which isn't a nothing operation. So you'd really have to have some major problems with children, young children. If they have a reoccurring splenic sequestration, which is life-threatening, then when I was practicing, we would consider a splenectomy to remove the spleen, because there's no pain involved, and little kids just won't, they don't communicate that well, and it can be lethal in small children. With SC, it may not be that dramatic, but it depends on how much pain is it really disabling? You can't do things. Is it happening a lot? Then you might decide to do something about it. Although a splenectomy would be kind of one of the out there and the last thing you'd think about.
All right. The question is, I got a bone marrow transplant to cure SS back in 2017. And I think it's failing due to some lab results and hospitalization due to pain. So tell us what you know about bone marrow transplants and, do they fail or what does that look like? What are some of the implications down the line?
So I'm not a transplant doctor, but I just from what I understand is if you had a transplant in 2017, that was quite a while ago, and I assume that between the time after you had your transplant up until recently, everything was fine, that you weren't having problems before today or whenever your problem started. The person who would know the most about that would be the transplant doctor who did the transplant, because they would know what kind of therapy you got for your conditioning, how things went. You may not remember, but how things went at the beginning, how long were there any other complications? The other thing is you have to think about is there some reason for your counts not being what they used to be? Is there another reason for that besides the bone marrow transplant not working? It could be a lot of things. There's a lot of things that can give people anemia, or if that's what the problem is. So if you go to it's a multi disciplined kind of thing. You should go to the transplant doctor or a transplant doctor and find out, if they can get your medical records, how things went at the transplant, how you've been doing in between, and what exactly is it that is the problem. And it may not be the transplant, it could be something else going on besides the transplant failing. It could be another problem. So it's not something you can kind of blow off, but it sounds like if you're getting counts, then you have a physician who's following you. But you might want to get a specialist involved in that.
All right. I'm just seeing a follow-up question from the blood clot question. What happens if the clot doesn't dissolve?
Well, if the clot doesn't dissolve, then you get your body wants to get oxygen to areas where there's a decrease. So you might have more vessels develop in order to get oxygen to that area. That can be a problem. Not that this individual would have this, but there's something called moyamoya disease, and that's not uncommon. It's kind of uncommon, but not really uncommon in people with sickle cell disease, where vessels that are proliferate, trying to get oxygen to areas of the brain that don't have enough oxygen. And those vessels are very friable. They're not kind of like normal vessels, and they can cause problems. So it's as long as that clot, it could be organized, maybe it's not going to go away. You need to have at least annual checkups to make sure that there aren't other things going on causing problems. It's of course it, but just to say it, it's a big deal. It's not a little deal. So I would definitely seek out help to figure out what's going on. And if, depending on who your primary is, ask them, is there a specialist somewhere that I could go talk to about this, even though they might just be giving me more advice. It doesn't, knowledge is power. The more you know, the better it is. So sometimes it's good to go to a specialist just to get the information, so you feel better about it.
So back to bone marrow. Somebody asked, how early can you get a bone marrow? My baby has SS or sickle cell disease. So what would be the right age to get a bone marrow transplant? And then I'll just quickly say just general information about gene therapy as well.
Oh, okay. Well, so bone marrow transplants are only really sort of approved in a kind of a way for people who have HLA identical siblings who could be a donor for the transplant. That means two children who have the same parents. One has sickle cell disease, the other one has sickle cell trait, or maybe doesn't have sickle cell at all, has normal hemoglobin. And so those HLA matched two children can have a bone marrow transplant very early. It depends on the transplanter and how they feel about it, but it could be very young, maybe before the age of 5 years. And so that's sort of that. So those transplants, the kids do great. They are more often than not, they're cured. It's miraculous in a sort of a way. And you should go to somebody who has done bone marrow transplants for sickle cell disease before, who knows how to take care of sickle cell disease. There's a sickle cell center. And it's amazing. Someone said my sister was my donor, and right, those are the people who do the best. Okay, so if suppose you don't have a sister, or you don't have a HLA matched sibling. So, hi Nivea.
I'm looking through these questions. These are such good questions, guys. Like, I can't wait to ask a lot of these. Okay, I just hope we have time. All right.
So if you don't have an HLA matched sibling, then everything else is a study. There's no, those HLA matched siblings, that is the way, that is like sort of the approved way to get a bone marrow transplant. All other transplants are studies. So what you have to do, you have to, you can go to clinicaltrials.gov, and that will tell you all the studies all over the world, really, that are doing transplant studies in sickle cell. But the best thing to do is go to a transplant doctor and say, what studies are available for my child at this age? There's a lot of, it's not always easy to get into a study because there are issues about who can be in the study, all that kind of stuff. So, but a transplanter would know that. So if you're near a major center, a sickle cell center, then contact them, find out who the transplant doctor is, and see if you can't talk to them, or a sickle cell doctor can talk to you about what's available and what the issues are if you don't have a matched sibling donor. So bone marrow transplants are a big deal.
Yeah, somebody said I'm post 1 year, 6 months bone marrow transplant. Shout out to City of Hope for saving my life. I believe City of Hope is in LA, if I'm not mistaken.
It's in Southern California.
It's in Southern California. Okay. Congratulations. Somebody else said I went to UCSF in California for my transplant. Girl, where you stay at? Because that's my hospital. That's my hospital.
Yeah, and Children's Hospital is, Mark Walters is the transplanter, and he's done, I don't know how many, he'd know, but that's a lot of transplants for people. Sickle cell disease, he does gene therapy. He's like one of the top sickle cell transplanters in the country, really.
Oh my gosh, I'm dying to ask this question. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna cut. Is liquid IV something that's actually helpful to use for hydration?
Is there what? Something
It's this thing, it's this mix called liquid IV. It's like you put it in your water and it has like all these electrolytes and for hydration, not water is enough, so it has like sodium and like just all this stuff, kind of like Gatorade, but like make your own.
I think
I have some right over there. I can show you. I'll be right back.
It's okay, but people with sickle cell disease have a hard time getting rid of potassium. So what you have to do if you're looking at some kind of hydrating fluid, make sure that there's not a lot of potassium in it. The other stuff that's in it, you just have to go to ask your doctor, this is what's in this drink that I'm using for hydration. There it is. And and if it contains a lot of potassium, or even maybe a little bit, depending on how much you're drinking, that could be a problem. You'd have to do a lot as an adult, but as I did have at least one child who had problems with potassium because their grandma was giving them something that had a lot of potassium in it.
Okay, so just watch out for the potassium.
Yeah, and you really only need water. You don't really need, unless you're sweating, you're working out like Cassandra does,
Because I don't, but I still drink liquid IV.
But if you just want to be hydrated, water is great. Water is good for you.
Water is best, Dr. Q says. Don't be purchasing all this junk.
And I guess what is
drink water.
Alkaline water has I actually read that alkaline water may actually not be a bad thing for sickle cell. But everything in moderation.
Wow, that's a huge statement coming from Dr. Q here, guys.
Hey, I didn't make it up. I read that, it might be something that you should consider. But everything in moderation. You really only need water. You don't need to pay money for water unless you live in Flint, Michigan. But in the Bay Area, California, the water is great. It's free. You just put your glass under there, your bottle, and fill it up. And that's really all you need. Anything else is kind of, I don't know. I hate to tell people to spend money on something that
should be free.
If you don't really need it. So, and it's think about how much money you spend on some kind of something, and then is there a way that I could save that money and do something fun?
Y'all are coming up with some original questions here. Let's see. What is it like working with sickle cell? Who wants to answer that? Who wants to kind of share their work experience? I think it really is on a personal basis, but I can tell you a little bit about how I work, because I'm in pain a lot, right? And I think that's been I've been in chronic pain for probably the last 5 years or so, where I have like pain pretty much every day. And so working a 9 to 5 wasn't ever going to be, wasn't ever going to work for me, because I'm just like, some days you just, I know you guys know, some days it's just really, really hard to get out of bed, really, really hard to, you know, focus on anything else other than the pain. And so what I do is I do consulting and I do Sickle Cell 101. And funny enough, started the organization back in 2013. And I started it as a remote organization because I did not want to go in to any building every day to work. Like I wanted to be able to work from my bed, wanted to be able to work from anywhere that I was, just have internet and a laptop and, you know, be good and be able to do whatever I needed to do. So before the pandemic and everything, I was doing remote working for, you know, the organization and then consulting with different companies who have, you know, just interest within sickle cell as well. Talking to them, telling them how to treat us, telling them what not to do, like, don't do this, don't do, you know, like making sure they come correct to the community, long story short. So that's a little bit about how I work. I would always think like if I wasn't doing anything or if I wasn't doing what I was doing, like maybe I'd try coding or, you know, just something that I can do. I really like graphic design too. So something that I can do from my bed is always my frame of mind when I think about working. Like if you guys have to pull me out of bed or if you guys have to pull me out of my house, pull me away from my heating pad, it's gonna be a problem. So I just think about, you know, what kind of jobs you know, allow you to work from home. And a lot of it is, you know, some customer service jobs, some coding, some QA, quality assurance, and all of that can be done from home. So that's what I do. Please feel free to share if you, but you know, I do know people who go into work every day with sickle cell. So that is a thing too. It's just not for me.
And there is something called Americans with Disabilities Act. So if you do have a job, they do have to make accommodations for you if you have sickle cell disease. So there's that. And also, one of my favorite stories, I guess, is a young man I had who seemed to never be able to keep a job very well. But it turns out that he wasn't telling anybody he had sickle cell disease. And when he had a pain event and got into the hospital, he never called his employer to say, "I have sickle cell disease. I'll probably be out of the, out of work for the next however many 4 or 5 days or something like that." He just didn't do anything. He just went into the hospital, and of course, you know, a week later he comes back and you're fired. You haven't been here for a week. Where have you been? Finally, I didn't realize this. I just thought, I don't know why. Anyway, I talked to him one time and I said, "Well, what does your employer do?" I mean, he always had a job. And he said, "Oh, I don't know. I didn't tell them. I don't tell people." And I said, "That is a big mistake. You talk to your if you talk to your employer, tell them what's going on, why his employer, this is really unusual, but his employer came to the hospital, talked to him, found out that he had AVN, he had a hip replacement, and got him a job in the same company, but through the, you know, using kind of like the ADA program, got him a job that he could do sitting down and not having to be on his feet all the time. So it's possible, but like Cassandra's saying, of course, everybody's online now. Nobody goes into work anymore. The BART here in the Bay Area, you couldn't even get on it. And now it's like empty because everybody's working from home. So there is a lot of online jobs now available, which are the best, like what Cassandra's saying.
This question says, "Hi, doctor. My mom passed away from sickle cell disease. She was 63. They said fat embolism was the reason for her death. Can you explain fat embolism, please? I've never heard
Oh,
of that.
so what they were talking about is your bone marrow is filled with fat. Okay, that's where all your progenitor cells live there, and they make your blood, etc. But there's also fat in your bone marrow. And so what can happen, and I don't know if this was what happened to this person, but you can have an infarct in your bone marrow that releases fat into your bloodstream. And it can cause what's called multi-organ failure. So much fat is released from your bone marrow that it can cause renal failure, acute chest syndrome, and stroke all at once. So this is it's not common, but it's a really serious, very, very, very difficult to treat complication of sickle cell disease.
So it is sickle cell related.
Yeah.
So
and go ahead.
So fat is released into the bloodstream, which makes it toxic when it's released into the bloodstream and can shut down organs, is what I'm hearing.
It clogs everything up. It's like a super unbelievable. And then it causes hypoxia. So what happens? You have more sickling. So it's just this really like
hypoxia is like lack of oxygen.
Lack of oxygen. So it's catastrophic, and it happens. It's not something that happens over a long period of time. It usually is kind of short. If you were in a hospital where they can do exchange blood transfusions, that sometimes is the treatment. You would take your blood out and replace it with donated blood. If you have a lot of antibodies to blood, that's really hard. Then you maybe can't have that kind of a therapy. But even with that, it's really difficult to treat.
Why does this happen within sickle cell?
Why does it happen in sickle cell? Because you get infarcts in your bone marrow. The bone marrow kind of dies, and it releases the fat into your bloodstream.
Got it.
So it'll also happen if you have like a pelvic fracture in a car accident, and this is outside of sickle cell, it can release fat and you can die from that as well. So there's fat in your bone marrow. When it goes into your bloodstream, it causes havoc, and it's frequently, unfortunately, lethal. So now I think with exchange transfusion, the survival is higher, but it's a really serious, terrible situation.
Okay. So many good questions. I'm having a baby in December, and I have SC. Any suggestions? Now, when you say SC, do you mean SC like in sickle cell, or SC as in like the type of sickle cell that you have, like SSSC? So, suggestions on someone having a baby in December. And congratulations, by the way. Hopefully pregnancy is going well. I did mine already. Mine just turned 10. So and it's fun.
She's 10 already?
She turned 10. She's 10. God. And I still feel like I'm 13. So it just doesn't even make sense in my head. So yeah. What suggestions do you have?
Now, see, I'm so old. I was laughing and forgot the question. That's the trouble, Cassandra. We have too much fun doing this.
Well, I don't know if it's an old thing, because the same stuff happens to me too. But I think I'm old too, so maybe that's what it is. I'm having a baby in December, and I have SC, but we don't know if she has SC like sickle cell SC or SC like sickle cell.
In the event, I'm making an assumption here that you're African American, you're Black, right? So in this country, you are at very high risk whether you have sickle cell disease or not. So you need a high risk OBGYN. You need to have a high risk neonatologist in the hospital where you're going, and you need to be seeing your sickle cell doctor. The OBGYN, your sickle cell doctor, the person who's in the nursery, all these people have to be talking to each other. This is something that needs to happen. And as you can, if you have Instagram, you can see that I'm SC and I had 3 babies. They're now 14, 7, and 3. So it's not impossible, but you do have to have good OBGYN and medical care. With SC disease, your hemoglobin is probably high, so you don't necessarily need to have blood transfusions. There's a study that hasn't started yet looking at blood exchange transfusions for people with SS who become very anemic during their pregnancy. So with people with SS, generally near the end of pregnancy, they get very anemic, and it's a little there's a controversy, and that's why there's going to be a study. But some people would give blood transfusions to increase the mother's hemoglobin, so that when the baby was born, the mom would be really anemic. And you want to have as much blood as possible to carry oxygen to the baby and all that kind of stuff. So if you have SS, people would, depending on the doctor, some people would start transfusions around the 3rd trimester or so. And there is going to be a study, so maybe in 4 years or 5 years, we'll have a definitive answer on what you should do for people with SS who are pregnant.
Yeah, my pregnancy, and I hear this a lot at 30, I started to develop preeclampsia, and it's common in sickle cell to develop preeclampsia during pregnancy. And so I was induced at 37 weeks. I've talked to a lot of other mothers with sickle cell, and they were the same, where they had to be induced at 37 weeks. I was followed by a perinatologist, a gynecologist, my hematologist, and my primary care physician. So I had a whole team of people. Towards the end, we had to test the baby's heart rate a lot more often. And so I would have to go in, probably in the last trimester, I would have to go into the hospital. I think it got as frequent as every day, like, just to make sure everything was fine. I had a vaginal birth. I was in labor, or I was pushing for what felt like 3 hours. And that was just mind blowing to me, because I was there when my sister gave birth to her son, and like he came out 20 minutes. So when I was pushing for 3 hours, I was probably actually pushing for more than 3 hours, but it was a long time. I was like, what is going on? Like, why am I still pushing? And I was like, okay, I think I said something like, let's try again tomorrow or something like that, because I was delusional at that point. Because I was like, it's time to get rest. I'm done pushing for today. They're like, nope, nope, come on, you gotta. I think for my whole pregnancy, I got like 1 blood transfusion, so I didn't really need a transfusion. I hear a lot of women say it's the healthiest they've ever been. So sometimes pregnancy can be like because of the extra volume of blood. I'm not sure. But I was pretty healthy, but I do know that's not the case. And my sister, who has SS, has 3 kids now. She had each kid at 37 weeks, but she was also in the hospital to quite a few times for pain for each pregnancy. And then when you go in as a pregnant woman and you're asking for pain medicine, now they have to consider your pain and the baby. And so it gets a little bit tricky, where hospitals may not give pain medicine the way that they used to. So always have a plan surrounding that and talk with your hematologist and have your hematologist talk to, whoever else and everything, because it can get very, very tricky where they may withhold pain medication or a certain pain medication because of the baby. So that's my 2 cents on pregnancy and sickle cell. But I was told I couldn't have kids like growing up because of sickle cell, and I do have my daughter, so I'm happy to have her, and I'm still here. Yeah.
And toxemia pregnancy is really common. So near the end of, not just, it's, sickle cell is, a complication, but all women should have their blood pressure checked frequently at near the in their last trimester, because that's can be lethal. Toxemia pregnancy is really, really bad, and it's the hallmark is high blood pressure. Usually people who are pregnant, their blood pressure is a little on the lowish side.
Okay. How frequent on average are you guys sickling? And I think this means, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think this means like how often are you guys in pain on average if you're living with sickle cell? Because if you say, how frequent on average are you guys sickling? I'm sickling right now, and then, well, I'm in pain, but I'm not in that type of pain. So you sickle from day one to death. If you have sickle cell, you're sickling every single day. And I really like talking about this because a lot of people think if I'm not in pain, I'm not sickling, but that's not true. You're sickling all the time, which is why doctors like to push a lot of these therapies to kind of slow down that damage, because sickling causes damage. And so if your blood is causing damage all the time, you want to slow the progression of that down. And so, I'm sickling every day, whether I'm in a lot of pain or whether I'm in a little pain or whether I'm in no pain whatsoever. How often do I have like a pain crisis? It would be, for me, the last really, really bad one that I had was back in 2017, and that was on a trip to Indonesia. And I was hospitalized probably about a month and a half. I got really sick when I was flying over there, and they didn't have, they couldn't give me a blood transfusion pretty much because they couldn't type across my blood. And so my hemoglobin kept dropping, and they had to fly me to Singapore where I was able to get blood. So long story short, that was the last time I have a SS. And so it just kind of goes to show, like, and I know people with SC who are hospitalized a lot more than me, but I don't get hospitalized often, but when I do, it's pretty bad. And that's kind of how my sickle cell presents, but everybody presents in their own way. My sister, she's SS as well, same genotype and everything. She's in the hospital probably once every 3 months or so, for pain or for, chest issues or whatever. So we're siblings, same genotype, but, present in two completely different ways. Hopefully it's helpful. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Dr. Q.
No, it's true. I think the most interesting thing from the doctor point of view is why siblings have such divergent, same parent, same disease. The SS is SS, it's genetic, and they have completely different presentations. And frequently they're just like what Cassandra's saying, where one sibling will not be that, well, you have sickle cell, so you're sick, but they will have much fewer symptoms than their sibling. I was just reading an article where it's kind of a big thing for doctors. Why do people who have the same parents, why are they so different? It would help us understand sickle cell if we could understand that, because you've got two people who are related and they're different. So why? So that might help us figure out why everybody with sickle cell disease, even though they have the same genetic mutation, they're all different. And you can never predict what's going to happen to someone with sickle cell. That is a really bad mindset to think, oh, I know sickle cell, you know,
Right.
whatever, because everybody's different. You got it. When someone comes in the door, they are not like the same person you saw 10 minutes ago. That's a new person, and they have a different disease almost. But so people are looking through the genome and people who have sickle cell disease to figure out what it is that makes people who have sickle cell disease so different. It's got to be some genetic markers that we could find that would be able to say, yes, this person is going to have more problems, so we need to intervene sooner in their life, and etc. So that's being looked at. It's not easy though.
Y'all, I'm behind on questions. I'm gonna just scroll to the bottom and work my way up because I just feel like this is going slow and I want to really answer some of these questions here. Okay. Some person said I have the trait. I also have microcytic anemia. Are you familiar with microcytic anemia?
Well, people who have alpha thalassemia, or who have alpha thalassemia can have microcytic anemia. You could have that along with trait and have, you know, more anemia than what you might expect. There's a lot of other reasons. Microcytic anemia could be iron deficiency, but you need to rule out other things before you start iron. Some people will just start iron as a sort of a test. They give you iron. Does your hemoglobin go up? If not, well, then maybe we should start looking for other reasons for your anemia. But iron's the most common thing, and then there are other genetic things that can cause anemia in anybody, but probably more pronounced in people with sickle cell trait.
Does flying on a plane affect crisis? My last flying, I went into a crisis also.
Well, the expert on that is right there in front of me.
You can definitely get a crisis. I've never gotten a crisis on a plane. Not a serious one. Like, you know, somebody asked about this too, and I wanted to ask that, you know, that knee joint pain or the joint pain that you have, like the crisis in your knee. I've had one of those. And I started wearing compression socks so that, you know, blood keeps circulating even though I'm sitting down for a longer period of time. But I've never been on like, you know, one of the ones where it's like serious, like your back is hurting, your chest or whatever, you need to go to the hospital. And I pray that never, ever happens to me or anyone. That, oh my gosh, that just seems like hell to me. But, you know, flying causes dehydration, and so dehydration is a trigger for pain and for crisis. And so what I try and do is I try and make sure I stay as hydrated as possible. I'll get up and I'll walk the aisles a lot. I do fly with oxygen as well. I have like a little portable oxygen concentrator. What else do I do? Make sure I have pain meds. Like if I'm about to be in a crisis, I need to be knocked out at that point. Like
you always get you get an
I am
ILC.
not, I don't not want to be aware and in pain on a plane. Like that's just, oh my gosh. Y'all are me talking about this, I'm already getting like nervous.
Because
no,
Cassandra does a lot of flying.
Yeah, I do a lot of flying, but just, yeah, making sure like, you know, you guys heard me. The last time I've been hospitalized was in 2017. So it's also whatever your sickle cell is type of thing. Like, you know, you always have to think about your health history in every single one of these scenarios, like flying and then your health history, and then pregnancy and then your health history. That's kind of how you have to think about it. Like, and I would say that's the best predictor of, you know, how circumstances will turn out, given that there is like limited research. So like if you know you're sick in the hospital on a monthly basis, then you're more likely to have problems flying. But if you know you're sick like in the hospital once in every 10 years, then you know you can kind of, and of course sickle cell is unpredictable. You can never be so sure about anything, right? I didn't bank on getting sick in Indonesia, let me tell you. So you know, sickle cell always has that element of surprise, and so nothing's ever certain. Yeah.
And you can go to a if you don't, if for some reason your insurance or you can't get an oxygen concentrator, or you can, there are pulmonary tests where they put you in a chamber and they decrease the they make it like the same O2 as what would be in a airplane, and then they can see whether how much you desaturate, how much you desaturate, and then they can prescribe you the oxygen generator. And I don't think any airline would make a big deal about you taking one onto the plane.
The oxygen?
But Cassandra knows that for sure.
Yeah, I have a letter from my pulmonologist saying, hey, this is how much oxygen I need. This is how much I need to fly with. Different airlines are different when it comes to that. And then you might have to have a special form if you're flying internationally with the oxygen. They make sure you have double the battery amount. So the battery amount that you carry with you has to be double the flight time. So it gets a little bit intricate, but you know, obviously well worth it because my oxygen stays pretty high while I'm in flight.
So getting an aisle seat, getting up, walking around on a long flight, drinking lots of water. And you need an aisle seat because you're probably going to get up and have to go to the bathroom while you're flying as well, if you're drinking enough.
Someone said my mom always brings pain meds on a plane just in case. Me too. Shoot. I've been in pain a few times on flight. Thank God it wasn't long flights. Oh, thank goodness. How do you get the portable oxygen? They're trying to charge me $3,000. They cost that much, unfortunately. I had to get a prescription in order to get it. I have the one that's called Inogen G4, and it's like probably about this size. And some insurance pays for it, some don't. Mine didn't, so I had to pay out of pocket for it, which sucks. But I do believe they, like Dr. Q said, they do have like rental programs where you can rent oxygen. I think you can even rent the machines, the small machines as well, instead of just purchasing them. But because I do travel a lot, I just went ahead and purchased it because I wasn't going to be able to go to work trips or visit family if I couldn't fly with oxygen. So I had to bite the bullet and purchase. And you don't travel a lot, maybe renting could be an option as well. When you got sick in Indonesia, did you have to wait to get better to fly back? Is that more of a risk? I did have to wait. I had to wait. I got really, really sick too, guys. So my hemoglobin dropped to probably like about a 4. And then at that time I got out and I flew to Singapore. They found out I had sepsis. They found out I had acute chest syndrome and I had a blood clot in my heart. and then, the severe pain. When I tell you I did not cry, I did not stop crying for probably a week and a half. Like I cried in my sleep. Like there weren't tears coming out anymore. It was just me like crying like audibly. It sounded like probably like a ghost or something, but I did not stop crying. I was in so much pain, and they don't give pain medicine. Or some countries have restrictions on how much pain medicine they give, and I happen to be in one of them. And so I was just like, I can't even believe it was like very, very traumatic experience. But I learned my lesson. All right. I see this question here. In what condition can we go for bone marrow transplant? That's a good question. Like, can anybody just get a bone marrow transplant, or do you need to be a certain amount of sick?
Well, like I was saying earlier, unless you have an HLA matched sibling, all other bone marrow transplants are studies, generally speaking. So there are exclusion and inclusion criteria for all studies. So you can't have any exclusion. You can't meet those criteria because then you can't be in the study. But there are a lot of studies for older, well, there are studies, not a lot, but there are studies for older people with complications who couldn't tolerate the conditioning chemotherapy you need for a bone marrow transplant. So they have a modified conditioning program for that. And you'd have to go on, talk to your primary care physician, find out if there's any studies around that. Most of these studies are done by sickle cell centers, so there aren't an incredibly vast numbers of these centers in the country. So you'd have to look around to see if you would qualify for a reduced intensity transplant. There's a lot of studies for transplanted sickle cell disease, obviously. And then there's, since this is, the new world, there are gene therapies that are really expensive, but they also have inclusion, exclusion studies. So you have to look in, that would be another thing. And those can only be done in special centers. So even though there may be 30 sickle cell centers in the country, I'm not sure how many there are, only a handful would be able to do that therapy. It requires a lot more infrastructure and stuff to do gene therapy. It's in its infancy right now, really.
Best ways to deal with depression associated with having sickle cell.
I think if you have, well, I mean, I don't have sickle cell, so I can't really say. But I would think that most people who have sickle cell disease have some degree of depression. That you can't, I don't know how I could personally cope with the disease where you were fine sometimes or better sometimes, and then you got really, really sick, and then it just goes, it's like on a roller coaster constantly your whole life. And you'd have to take all these medications. So I think most people, Cassandra could answer that, but most people I think with sickle cell have some degree of depression. And there's two ways you can, if you are in a sickle cell center or a hospital, you can talk to your social worker. There are some social workers who do therapy, and that would be really, really helpful. Yeah. And then they could also figure out if you could be referred to a therapist. In this country, mental health care is really crummy for everybody. And, it's not better for people with sickle cell. So it would, if you're feeling depressed, that's the time to start looking, because it could take months to find a therapist. And then some therapists will say, well, I can only see you, so many times a year because I don't get paid enough. And once I start seeing you more than that, they stop paying me. So there's a lot of caveats to care, to mental health care. But I think that I would talk to your primary care physician, but if there's a social worker, that would be another person. We had a great social worker at Children's, and I spent a lot of time in her office talking about mental health problems with people who had sickle cell.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm in a place to give advice because I'm still trying to figure it out too. I'm just being honest, right? But so I hadn't been to clinic since the pandemic hit. And so I had my first clinic appointment probably a couple months ago. And they had mental health services. And I was like, let me go ahead and just jump on that real quick because I do need to talk to somebody. I do need like to be able to. I saw this paper that said that particularly Black women, we hold so much in, like, just all the microaggressions, and this is even going beyond sickle cell, right? This is just being a Black person, a Black woman. We hold so much in and we don't react to like we don't react the way that we should, or the way that is like kind of outward, that it causes autoimmune disorders. Now, don't you might need to look up the study yourself, or don't take my word for it or whatever, but I think just being Black, being having sickle cell is like a double whammy, and mental health is so important. And so I did talk to somebody to try and get me signed up for something with the mental health through my insurance. I know they have some apps. They cost money though, so I don't know if insurance covers. I think the insurance covers some of it, but the goal, or I guess the 2 cents that I can give is don't hold it all in. You have to let that out. Like you have to cry. You have to keep talking to people. I think you even have to talk to people who like live it. I think that's part of it too, is talking to other people with sickle cell disease because they get it. Because that validation is going to be very, very, very important. And so, like I said, I don't know much. That's just my 2 cents. I just feel like mental health has become a bigger issue for me, like within the past couple years too. Like anxiety has risen so much. So I do like social media dieting where I completely log off because I'm an empath too. So like any news story I come across that's sad enough, I'll cry, and like it'll be like I'm that person that's being affected. And so just you kind of have to know what your triggers are. You have to know how to reel it back and make sure you know how to care for yourself in that way. And then, seek help. I hope at this point nobody feels shamed to seek help or shamed into thinking, because us in the Black community, we're like, oh, we don't need mental health, we don't need to see a therapist and all that type of stuff. I hope we're at a point where throw all that out the window, because at the end of the day, if you're keeping these things and you're internalizing these things, it ends up hurting you in the end. So find ways in finding an outlet. And yeah, that's my 2 cents. I know that's not as helpful, but I think we're all kind of just trying to figure it out. Researchers are still trying to figure out because we don't have the data around that, but we do know that people, I think it's like as as many as 25% of people with chronic illnesses, not just sickle cell, chronic illness, have higher rates of depression and anxiety. So know that there is that correlation between the two. You're not crazy. You're not like, you know, it's not just you. There is a correlation between having a chronic illness and depression and anxiety. And I know just with us with sickle cell, we can talk about the unpredictability of the disease. We can talk about feeling guilty because you feel burdensome to the people around you. You can talk about feeling hopeless and helplessness and all of that. Feeling like you can't do anything about your health or you're out of control. So all of that is all valid. And it's just, you got to find your way on how to make that right in your head and how to be able to still be happy and, you know, live a fulfilling life. So.
And there are community-based organizations. So if you live in a city or somewhere where there's a sickle cell center or there's a sickle cell doctor, frequently there will be a community-based organization. They meet, you know, maybe once a month, but they're all people with sickle cell disease, and you can get together with a group of people and, you know, talk about what it's like for everybody in the group, and maybe if there's enough people, they can figure out how to get therapy going for people. But community-based organizations are very, very helpful for people with sickle cell diseases.
Yeah.
And usually they're, not always, but sometimes they're affiliated with a hospital.
Yeah, find somebody. I know a lot of people are isolated. They don't know anybody else with sickle cell. That's what, you know, this is why we have Sickle Cell 101 so that you can connect with people, you can DM people. I see so many conversations. I see a community like right here on the chat. That's why I'm trying to scroll frantically here, trying to get all of your guys' questions because the engagement is really everything, right? And you know, just sometimes like I'll see somebody else with sickle cell and it's just like they got a look on their face. And you don't even, words don't even have to be exchanged. And I just get it. Like I know you're in pain. Let me just, you know, and sometimes you need that from other people, right? Like I just feel like with sickle cell, we always have to explain ourselves. We always have to explain and we always have to over explain. But to have someone just get it right off the bat, like means the world. So really just find that person that you can confide in with that has sickle cell, even if they're digital, you know, it's still something so that, you know, you don't feel alone in all of this and you don't feel like you're going crazy. I'm sure like most of the stuff you're going through, somebody else with sickle cell is going through it too. And then somebody else with a chronic illness is going through it as well. So, yeah. Um, I'm still trying to get through your questions. I wrote down here. Somebody's taking Therafox. I think that's for iron overload. And they asked how long they have to take it for.
Well, if you're on chronic transfusions, as long as you're on chronic transfusions, really. And iron overload is a big deal. So people with sickle cell disease, even if you're not on chronic transfusions, if you've gotten over 10 or so transfusions in your lifetime, then you should know what your ferritin is. Ferritin is not an accurate measure of iron, people say, but for an individual, if your ferritin is going up, it means you're getting more iron overloaded. You can't necessarily compare your ferritin with the other person sitting in a day hospital who's getting transfused. They may not really jive. But for you, if your ferritin's going up, you're getting more iron overloaded. And if you're on a oral iron chelator, then you need to figure out with your primary care, the transfusion doctor, you know, what can I do to get my iron down? Having iron overload, you wouldn't know you had iron overload. There's no symptoms to it. There's no, you know, you feel good because you're on a transfusion program. So you just kind of blow it off and you don't really want to take this medicine every day. But I can tell you, if once it gets to a certain point, it's really hard to get it down. So you have to really stay on top of it. And iron overload is lethal. There's a lot of morbidity or illness and a lot of mortality or death from iron overload in people who are chronically transfused. So you need to know what your ferritin is. Make sure if it's really high, it's like 3,000, it's going down, or 1,000, going down. And if there's an exchange, if you really need transfusion and there's an exchange transfusion program, that's where they take the same amount of blood out as they put in. That can help you get your iron down to a safe level. But iron overload there's a lot of unnecessary deaths in the sickle cell community because people don't take their chelators, and it's really sad because it's completely preventable. It sucks to have to take a medication every day, but it keeps you alive.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and take a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. This has been such a great live. You guys really showed out today. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions I have here. I know the answer. I think I know the answer to this one, so I want to ask it, and hopefully this person's still online. I have SC genotype. I have been suffering from recurrent bleeding from blood vessels in my eyes. I have had laser treatment, however, it keeps happening. What could be the issue, please?
So my assumption is, well, it doesn't have to be. I'm really making most people. Retinopathy of sickle cell disease is most common in people with SC disease. So it's not uncommon. It's just if you have SC, you need to be checked every single year to make sure you're not developing retinopathy. And then if you have sickle cell SS, there's different risks for different types of SS, other diseases, but SC is the people who need to be checked every year. So the retinopathy is due to the sickle cell. You've got these teeny tiny little vessels in the back of your eye, and they can become occluded, and then the vessel kind of puts out more, like we were talking about earlier. Your body needs oxygen, so these vessels start growing outside of usually they're against the retina, but they start growing out. They become very friable, and they will start bleeding, and so you have bleeding into your eye. The other thing is that just by themselves, those clots can contract, and they will pull your retina off the back of your eye, and then you can have really severe vision problems from the retinal detachment. So the cure or the treatment, there's no real cure, but the treatment is to use laser therapy to stop those, to cauterize those vessels so that the bleeding will stop and it won't start again. There's some ophthalmologists will sort of cauterize the whole inside. I'm not an ophthalmologist, so I don't know, but they treat the entire back of your eye in order to try to decrease the amount of bleeding and retinopathy you'll have. But I think what you need to do is talk to your ophthalmologist and your primary care and try to get a plan and find out from them why you're having these reoccurring bleeds and what can be the treatment for that. It sounds for this person, it sounds really serious. And for people with SC disease and all sickle cell, you really need to keep on top of this and probably start checking. And before, if you have SC, I used to check at 10, and then every year after that. The youngest person I saw with retinopathy was 12 years old. And it just needs something you have to work on for the rest of your life, because it's can be very serious, and it sounds like that's the case here.
So the complication is called sickle cell retinopathy.
Right.
And of course, get that confirmed or get a diagnosis from, your provider. But that's what it could sound like. And sickle cell retinopathy is more common in people with sickle cell type SC disease. So I know people with SS get retinopathy too, but it's at a lower rate than people with SC. So my next question is, how important is it for a person with sickle cell to follow up with a primary care if you regularly see a variety of specialists like a hematologist, gynecologist, urologist, ophthalmologist, etc.?
Well, somebody has to coordinate all that. So,
and that's your primary care?
That's your primary care person. Each one of those subspecialists knows a lot about whatever your problem is. Your ophthalmologist knows all about your retinopathy. Your neurologist knows about any kind of neurological problems you have. Your pulmonologist knows how well your lungs function, but they don't necessarily talk to each other. It's like you have all these little compartments, but nobody knows the big picture. Like, how many problems do you really have?
Except for you and that, yeah.
And so you need someone to pull all that together and then give you advice on a general level. I mean, all these different subspecialists will be giving you advice about their subspecialty, but they're not integrating things so that maybe there's an overlap or one problem's affecting another problem. And that's what your primary care physician is for, is to pull all that together and give you a picture of what is really going on the big scale and what needs to be done in order to fix things as best as possible. So that is what primary care physicians do. I'm just going to say this really, there is something called palliative care, and they've branched out. It used to be palliative care. People would think, oh my God, palliative care, I don't want that. That's for people who are really sick and are going to die in 20 minutes, but that's not really what that's about. So palliative care in sickle cell disease, it means somebody who does something that maybe your primary care doctor doesn't have time to do. I was reading about it in the hematologist. It's not really a journal, but it's like a journal. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, that's what I did. Why is that so special? But a lot of doctors don't do that, and they're not trained to do it. I was a nurse before I was a doctor, so I have kind of a different take on things a little bit, I think. But anyway, palliative care doctors, that's what they do. They find out what your problems are, not just your medical problems, but your life problems. How can we make this person's life better? And then they work on that with you to figure out, these are, and they're doctors, so they know something about medicine. So they try to put it all together, not necessarily to on a doctor level, but on a holistic level. Like, what do you need to really feel better? What can make your life better? And that's kind of their take. I don't think it's available everywhere, but it's I wouldn't just, if somebody makes a recommendation for that, I wouldn't just blow it off and say, no, that's not for me, because it could be for you. It could be for anybody who has sickle cell, and they might be able to get you mental health coverage. That's their job. They may be able to know somebody in the community who's willing to do mental health care for people with sickle cell. And maybe other people don't know that. It's something to think about for sure.
All right, I got time for one more
Oh
question.
no, we have to stop. Oh, that's not fair.
Next question I see in the chat. Let's see. Oh my gosh. Y'all,
I
I
hope you're
can't.
writing these down so we can talk about them next week or 2 weeks from now.
All right, here goes. Please talk about Kriz
About what?
monthly crizolizumab Adakveo
okay.
monthly shots for sickle cell. My hematologist recommended, but I'm concerned, as you should be. I mean, I say that like as in, okay, not like that, but like as you should be with any medication or intervention, right? Because you're being a good advocate for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Knowledge is power. So you got to know if somebody tells you need something, you should go figure out from somebody what are they talking about? Do I really need this or not? Okay, crizolizumab is a antibody against something called P-selectin, which occurs on the lining of your blood cells, on your white cells. It's kind of ubiquitous. Yes, research. And so if it blocks all those, this P-selectin, which is an adhesion molecule, your blood should be able to flow better, right? And it does, So, but it's expensive. It requires you to go to a day hospital. You got to get an IV. You got to get an infusion. Which if you have sickle cell, maybe that's for me. That would be a big deal. But maybe if you have sickle cell disease, you've gotten so many. The other thing is, if you have sickle cell disease, it may be really hard to start IVs, which is another issue altogether. So that's what it does. In the study, it showed that it decreased pain, but there weren't any episodes of acute chest syndrome, so they don't really know if it decreases acute chest syndrome. And this is another study where people were taking hydroxyurea along with getting crizolizumab. So that, always those things kind of make things a little difficult to figure out because you're taking 2 medications for your sickle cell. And so in this country, crizolizumab is FDA approved for people with sickle cell disease. There is some little controversy about it because in the EU, the European Union, the organization that operates like the FDA, except they also look at what things cost. And is this a cost-effective medication? So in the EU, crizolizumab is not approved because they didn't think that the studies, and there's controversy about this. Obviously, if the FDA approved it, they thought that studies proved the point, but in the EU, they didn't think they met what they wanted it to be statistical significance. So it's available in this country, but if you went to England, you probably would have a hard time getting it if you could. So there is some controversy there. But I think what you have to do, like the person who wrote research, is you have to look at it and figure out, is this good for you? Maybe you should try it and see if it's effective, or talk to your doctor about, well, what should I expect from this? I'm having these problems. How long, if I do this for 6 months, what should I expect? Should I be feeling a lot better, or whatever? So everybody, like we've been talking about this whole time, everybody with sickle cell is different. Some drugs work. Hydroxyurea doesn't work for everybody. Crizolizumab may not work for everybody, but it could work for you. So do your research, learn about it. You can go online and you can learn a lot. So a lot of it's kind of in medical mumbo jumbo, but the information is there. So you have to decide if it's what is good for you. And if you're not sure, try it and see what happens. But don't stop like one treatment. Oh, this doesn't work. Everything you do, you have to do it for a period of time to figure out if it's really working. So.
Yeah, I use myself as a experiment, even though obviously these are FDA approved and everything. But I'm like, if there's one thing about me, I'm gonna try it to see if it works for me. And if I try it, I'm going to do it the right way. Like I'm going to follow every instruction just to make sure I know that I tried it and I gave it a shot. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, I know I did it the right way. And I know that it just simply doesn't work for me. So I'm not gonna ever be wondering, did this medication just, so I set alarms and everything. I have alerts, alarms, just all these things going off. Take your medicine. Yeah.
So that's like hydroxyurea. If you don't take it for 6 months or a little bit more, you don't know whether it really works for you or not. And then what you don't want to do is say, well, I only took it for a month and it didn't work. Maybe I should try that again. You want to do it like what Cassandra's saying, do it the way you're supposed to do it for as long as it's supposed to, however long you need to take it to get better. And if you don't, then you have to kind of reassess. Is this good for me? I'm not every person. I'm me. So it may not work for me.
Okay. It says vitamin D gives you great energy. Agreed. And we're vitamin D deficient. I think Black people are vitamin D deficient, but then when you add sickle cell on top of it, it's another one of those double whammies. So make sure
it helps your bone density as well. If you take calcium, if you have a source of calcium.
All right. Well, it is unfortunately time for us to wrap up, but listen, we're not gonna meet you guys in 5 months from now. We'll be here in 2 weeks, right, Dr. Q? Right?
We'd better be. I'm holding you responsible.
We'll be here. We won't take such a long break in between. Like we'll be here. Every time you guys see that story that says ask the experts and you can submit your questions, just know we're gonna be there the next day. You will see us.
Right.
But go ahead and give your special statement, Dr. Q.
So I have to give a little, I want to give a little talk here. So I'm a pediatrician. I'm not a hematologist. I took care of people with sickle cell disease for 20 years. But what you're hearing come out of my mouth is my opinion. Other doctors may not agree with me. They may take issue with some of the things you've heard from me. So the other thing is, I don't know anybody who asks these questions. I know nothing about you except I know you asked a question. So my answers are just for information. I take the question and I try to formulate it so that anybody who's listening will be informed about your question, including you. But I don't know enough about anyone who's scrolling through on Instagram to know anything about you. So what I'm giving you is information. It's my opinion, and other people may not agree with me. So research, research, research. Whoever said that, thank you. And if you hear something from me, make sure it's true. Go ask your your personal doctor and say, has on this old guy with a looked like he was on his last legs, was talking about sickle cell. And does he know what he's talking about? What's going on here? So that's my disclaimer. I plead old age.
And I plead sickle cell, so don't trust us. No, I'm playing.
Yeah, you can listen. You can listen to Cassandra more than you listen to me, right?
But I'm learning from him, guys, so you know where the
Well,
source
we've known
is.
each other for a long time.
We have, yeah. I feel like we've done this for 9 years now. Ask the
Yeah.
experts.
So
Been doing
I
it for a
think
while.
when Cassandra started this, she said, would you go online and answer people's questions? I'm like, hey, sure, that sounds like fun.
You guys
And it
don't know,
is.
Dr. Q
I
was my
love it.
pediatrician. He was my doc. So when he knows me, he knows my
Yeah.
sickle cell,
Yeah,
right?
I know
I
Cassandra.
dragged my doctor and said, you have to come on live with me and answer questions. So the rest is history. Anyways, thank you guys. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry we didn't get to all your questions today, but they
yeah.
are like really phenomenal questions. And if you have like that burning question, please feel free to send it to me because, if y'all like Dr. Q on live, he can type a mean response with all the receipts, all the sources and everything for you guys. So you can send in any questions that you didn't get answered that you really want to get answered to ask@sc101.org. And Dr. Q does an amazing job. So thorough, like he's better than AI when it comes to this stuff. So feel free to send over your question and we will be back in 2 weeks.
Bye, Maggie.
Hi, Maggie. He was my doctor too. All right. Take care, guys. Have a good
Bye-bye,
weekend.
everybody. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I'm still on.